Welcome to this edition of the Introverted Networker. I'm Greg, the Introverted Networker. Today I'm talking about the first anniversary of my newsletter. This weekend, 1 year ago, I sent out the first issue of the Introverted Networker Newsletter. At the time, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it a year. That was the number one goal. My one goal with launching the newsletter a year ago was to see if I could make it an entire year, publishing once a week every Saturday morning to a audience of people who are interested in learning how to be better networkers. That was the entire goal. Each week worked on the topic, worked up the issue, got it out there, and I'm happy to say that I successfully published every Saturday for the last year. Sometimes it was a little bit closer to the deadline than others, and I thought there were going to be times when maybe it wouldn't quite get out there when I wanted it, but I was able to get it out there, and I'm really, really proud of that accomplishment. And I want to thank all of you who have joined the newsletter since the start and who have recently joined the newsletter. Without you as an audience, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, but you're the reason why I did show up and publish for all those Saturdays. It's been an interesting year in terms of learning how to publish this newsletter, how to continue coming up with content for the newsletter, how to get better at producing it. I've learned a lot of things that worked well and a lot of things that didn't work so well. And I think all of those contributed to where I am today. Now, where am I today? Let's talk about this a little bit. I have almost 800 newsletter subscribers, which in the scheme of newsletters is not a large audience. However, I am more focused on having a very engaged audience. So an audience that connects with what I'm writing, an audience that likes what I'm writing, an audience who tries the things that I put out there and finds value in it, tries things, lets me know if they didn't work so we can readjust. That's really what I would love to get from all of you. If you've sent me an email saying, here's what my biggest networking challenge is, thank you. I really appreciate those. I appreciate responding to each and every one of those. If you haven't done that, feel free to do that at any point. I would always love to hear what it is you're struggling with. Not that I would love to hear you're struggling, but if you need help or advice, I'd love to be able to help you out with that. I want to reflect a little bit on this past year, and I know you're probably here to get some advice and some tips and tricks, but really what I want to do is look back on some of the things this past year and maybe point out a couple issues or a couple of series of issues that I put together that might be helpful for you. If you haven't gone back and read some of the previous issues, I would highly recommend doing that, especially if you're new subscriber here. And a lot of you are new. My growth has gone up a lot in the last couple months. And there's some very specific reasons why I think that's happened. But there's been a lot of growth and a lot of new subscribers. So if you haven't gone back to some of those previous issues, I'll point a few of those out, some of my favorite issues or groups of issues. But I want to start back with why I launched a newsletter. Why did I decide to do this? I've done a lot of things with trying to teach people to network. I have done email courses where you get a daily email that tells you one thing to do. I've done ebooks where I give you, short guides on what you can do to improve your networking. I've done one-on-one coaching. I've done group coaching. In 2020, I wrote a book. I wrote a book about networking called The Fast and Easy Guide to Networking for Introverts. And that's out there on Amazon. And many of you have probably purchased it. I keep selling books there and people keep buying that. I hope if you bought that, you've enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please, give me a review on Amazon if you really liked it. If you didn't like it or you thought there was things that could be better, please send me an email and tell me what you didn't like about it. I'd be happy to learn more from you. Again, that's the whole reason I'm here. And then probably about 2021, after I wrote the book, I felt like I launched the book to an audience that was very small. I didn't have a lot of people who knew who I was. I put the book out there, and some people bought it and they thought it was an interesting title, but they didn't really know me. And in 2021, I really got focused on posting very consistently on LinkedIn. I started posting every weekday at the same time about one topic, mostly networking. Occasionally I would write something else, but I was trying to go all in on my brand on LinkedIn and say I was the person who talked about networking for introverts. So I spent a lot of time learning how to create consistent posts on LinkedIn, how to continue to have the conversation, how to respond to comments, just really how to be consistent and show up every day. And as I did that, I continued to grow my followers on LinkedIn, but that was the only place I was engaging with them. And a lot of times on LinkedIn, people don't like to leave comments, and there's only so many characters you can put in a post. There's other ways to leverage your content there, but at the time I felt like I wanted to have a different way to connect with my audience or people who are interested in networking for introverts. And that's why I decided to launch this newsletter. Now, of course, I thought about doing it in 2021, and I created on Substack, which is how I send out my newsletters. I created the framework. I created a newsletter called the Introverted Networker in May of 2021, and then I never published an issue until July of 2022. I got busy doing the stuff on LinkedIn. I was focused on that. I had other things going on in my life, so I didn't. And the other problem was I also didn't know what to write every week. I mean, I had my ideas and I had my LinkedIn posts and I had my book and I had all these things, but I thought, what else am I going to put in the newsletter? So for a long time, I just kind of put it on the back burner and didn't do anything with it. And then a year ago, I finally said, hey, I need to get this going. I need to get some of that audience from LinkedIn to move to a newsletter, because sometimes you miss stuff on LinkedIn. Not everybody's on LinkedIn all the time. It's easy to not see my posts. So I wanted a more consistent way to connect with my audience. And that's why I decided to launch the newsletter. So I launched it last year, and I had a strategy for how I was going to do the first 6 or 7 issues. And effectively what I did is I took pieces from my book and I rewrote parts of it for my first few issues, because that gave me a start. That allowed me to get going and to really lay out my networking process. So if you haven't read the first, I'll call it 7 issues, and you want to know my process for networking, I would recommend you go and read those first 7 issues. They only take 3 or 4 minutes to read, so you're probably looking at about a half hour of reading time. I have links to other things there, and if you read through those and you follow the steps in there, you will have my whole networking process all in one place. You don't even have to buy my book. I would love it if you did, but of course, I'm just telling you, if you want the summary, if you like the short version, if you can't pick up a book and get from the start to the end, go read those issues, because that will give you the whole process. And by doing that, it got me going. It got me practice showing up every week. So to show I could do this and I could get it published, and I wasn't going to just do a couple issues and then split. So I got the first 7 issues out there, and then I started trying to think, okay, what's next? What are some other things that I could work on? And what are some other things I could teach you, or other pieces of knowledge I could give to you? The next sort of big series that I did was on networking for LinkedIn. And so, if I come over to my page here, and I guess I probably could have done this a little bit earlier in this podcast, but we mess up. So here's where I started, and I call it the Introverted Network. So 10 number 001, that's the very beginning of my process. And then it walks through, how to reconnect, how to online, how to move it to offline conversations, how to have networking conversations, how to get people to help you, how to give them your target company list, how to create a habit. Then I created another, post on excuses, and then I talked about how to network on LinkedIn. And there's 3 issues around that I wrote on this. I had to break it into 3 separate issues because it was just getting too long. I like to try to stay around 3 or 4 minutes for my for my read time, because I don't want you to have to sit there and read all day. I certainly don't like to read all day on newsletters. I like to skim through them and try to get the really good parts, and then try to put them into action. So go back if you haven't looked at how to network on LinkedIn. There's part 1, 2, and 3, and there's some good tips and tricks and tools that you can use to start to find people and reconnect with people and get going with your networking. As you can tell, I'm a big advocate of LinkedIn. That's my main social platform that I'm on. That's how I communicate my ideas, and that's kind of the start. Most of you probably joined my newsletter because you saw me on LinkedIn. But there's some good key tips and tricks in those 3 issues that will help you be a better networker on LinkedIn. And then, as time went on, I tried to get better at how I produce this. And I had some opportunities from my real life come up where I could actually test out how my networking worked. Because it's one thing for me to tell you, but I have to do it myself to kind of prove that it also works. And one of those was I went to a conference, and leading up to that conference, I wrote a post about, how I was going to do my networking at the conference. So I have a couple posts here, number 15 and 16, sorry, issues number 15 and 16, where I wrote about how to prepare and get ready to go to a conference so that you can make the most of it for networking. So that was back in the fall of 2022. So if you do have a conference coming up and you want to get prepped a little bit, check out 15 and 16 there. Also, I went to another conference later on in the spring of 2023, and this one was in Las Vegas, and I wrote about it in issue 40, talking about how my networking strategy worked there. And I did some different things there than I did at that earlier conference, but I think that's another good one if you're going to a conference, thinking about how you can try to network, and for me, what worked and what didn't. So those are a couple of the series that I really liked. I enjoyed producing, putting together. And then I got into, in the last couple of months, turning this newsletter into what I'll call an audio or video newsletter. And the other word is podcast, right? Everybody knows what a podcast is. But I started creating my newsletter a little differently. I started doing these video podcasts, what I'll call, which was me talking about what I was going to write in the newsletter. And the reason why I did that is because I can say a lot more and give you a lot more details on video and in voice than I can writing. These usually run between 10 and 15 minutes. So I can definitely get into more details to help give you more tips and tricks. So I started creating this video, and then the video, I process the video, I post it on my YouTube channel. Then I take the audio from that video and turn it into the audio version of the newsletter or the audio podcast that comes out on Substack at the same time as my newsletter. And then I do some other stuff with it. But the point of that is, the reason why I do that is everybody likes to get information in different ways. Some people like to watch videos. Some people like to listen to the audio. Some people like to read. And depending on what you like, I want to be able to give it to you in a way that really connects with you. So that's why I've kind of started going to that. And some of you maybe noticed that. Some of you maybe never knew that I had just started doing that, but I definitely started doing that, and plan to continue to do that more. And if I kind of see that the podcast version of this is really gets to be popular, I may do it a little bit differently to make it a little bit more professional. And likely what I will do coming forward, so thinking about what's next for the Introverted Networker, I'm going to continue to post every Saturday the best things that I've learned or the things that I've thought about in terms of networking that I think will help you. Put those in my newsletter and publish those every Saturday, along with the video and the audio podcasts. And then I'll probably go back to the beginning of my first issues, and I'll turn those newsletter issues into a podcast so that those are also out there as well. And that's what I'm really planning on doing for the next year. I'm getting much better at how to put this together in a way that's quick and easy for me, and makes it so that I can show up every week and do it consistently. The thing that I would love to hear from you is what's working with your networking and what's not working with your networking. I know many of you, again, have sent me emails, but I would really encourage you to let me know what you're struggling with. I may have some ideas, or we can work together on solutions. And the last thing is I'm going to be creating some short courses, almost live courses for my audience that I'll be letting you know about in the next couple months. And what those will be is they'll be, really short sessions that you can attend live with me, and I'll go through some of my best networking advice, and you'll get to hear it live. And the best thing is you get to ask questions. So if you have questions about things not working, you can be part of that. Those will, of course, be recorded and they'll be available. And you, as the audience of the Introverted Networker Newsletter, will have first access to those, and likely get access to those at a very deep discount. I'm planning on using those in the future as a way to generate some income from this newsletter. But those are some of the things I've got planned coming up in the next year. Again, I want to thank you for being here with me, for subscribing to it. It means a ton to me that people show up and read this, and I get comments all the time that people say they enjoy reading it. So that makes me feel great. Until next time, next week, when I show up again, as I have for the last year, have a great week. I hope that you are able to connect with somebody, grow a new connection, and find a new opportunity. Take care. Thank you so much. As always, be connecting.